All right, hello. So today we're going to do a video on some portfolio changes, some changes I'm making in my portfolio, in our portfolio, I should say, Beth and I's. So I want to qualify this right out of the gate with don't listen to my investment strategy. I'm not giving anyone investment advice, believe you me. Um, I kind of, in a sense, when I do these videos, I'm kind of crowdsourcing my whole plan. So if anything, it's the other way. I'm interested in a lot of times in what people have to say to me. So it's kind of covering, I'm covering myself, but don't listen to my plans. I mean, if you think you want to do that, feel free, but don't do it because I do it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to cover my move of some of the government stuff that I had. So when I had my 401k years ago, I wanted to start essentially getting funds, mutual funds and stuff that weren't offered in the 401k. So I started that process by moving money into a brokerage link. And what I discovered was when you do that, they actually put that into short-term treasury bonds so you can make money off of it, which is great because that's part of what I wanted to do in the first place. I didn't want to get into bonds. I mean, I used to hold a lot of money in bonds, but just not a huge bond guy. I mean, it's fine, whatever. I mean, people do what they want. Um, so I had this money in there and it did great. For years, I did it right before the interest rates started going up, or right when they started going up. And because the timing was really good. I was getting close to retirement. The interest rates were moving up quite a bit and I wanted less risk. And so it ended up being a perfect way to do less risk. Okay, but I've been chewing around in my head for a while now that I've been wanting to do something with it because I think interest rates are going to start going down again. So that's what this video is about, what I did and how I did it. So first of all, this is the makeup of my portfolio now. I have a whole video on my portfolio, that I did probably, I don't know, a few months ago, but we'll go over it real quick again because I made a few changes. So AIX, I have $600,000. That's basically an S&P 500 index. This is the government short-term treasury bonds. This, or not treasury bills. FZROX it's a uh, zero expense ratio in custom index fund in Fidelity, where they pick uh, American companies essentially. It's not purely S&P 500, but it is a lot of the S&P 500. Then I have 161,000 in a Nasdaq fund, and then I have a fixed annuity for 3 years for 4.45%. With I have 457,000 in that. And this is kind of a giveaway, right? My thing is I'm going to go into gold, and we'll get into that in a second. But this week, you can see as a percentage. My wife has a portfolio. It's about 200,000. It's pretty conservative. It was done by a financial advisor, and so it's just pretty conservative. And then finally, we have just cash on hand of 185,000. Okay, so let's get into gold. So for a while, I was trying to think of where I wanted to go with this. And then just in the last couple of weeks, I've kind of felt pressed to make my move because I'm pretty certain Powell's going to actually reduce the interest rates. Why, I don't know. But I've been feeling for a while that they were going to reduce interest rates. I was a little surprised they didn't. But I guess, with all the tariffs and all that uncertainty, I could see why he chose not to. Everyone's calling it political. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know the guy. But I've always felt he did a pretty good job. So but I'm convinced now he's going to do it. And so I wanted to start moving out of these short-term T-bills, and I was trying to figure out where to go. Um, that was similar risks that would help my portfolio. And so really, I decided to go with gold. And I'll tell you why, because I think bonds are similar, which we've seen in the last few years, that bonds can go down. Bonds are not in direct opposition to stock, right? Just because the stock market goes up, that means bonds go down, or the stock market goes down, so bonds go up. Yes, people will go to those markets, in my opinion. So stock is going down, people look for certainty in bonds. If the stock market's doing really super well and people feel, gosh, I'm willing to take a little more chance than the fix, then they invest in the market. So that drives kind of where it goes. But as we've seen in the last couple of years, they can both go down. Makes a lot of sense, right? Because if it's the same companies, granted, one is a bond saying the company promises to pay back, and the other is just they're a company that has stock. If the company's having problems, it puts at risk your ability to pay back, and it puts the risk that the stock will go down. So I don't know. So I've just been feeling like, I don't know. I just didn't want to do bonds. I'll probably go to bonds at some point, but I decided instead to do gold. And for a couple of reasons. Like personally, it's kind of wacky. I've done some homework on it at one point. Like it's shiny and people really, it's a limited resource. You don't really do much out of it except for make jewelry. I mean, it's kind of crazy actually, but it has been the standard for exchange security since forever, since it was discovered, I guess. So so then the question becomes, well, why do I think gold's going to go up in value? And it's not just because I was looking, even though I really didn't realize how much it had gone up in value since I started looking at this. But I think it's going to go up in value because I think alliances like BRICS that are trying to do their own internal trading, which is kind of weird that the US dollar is the global trade anyhow. Why shouldn't companies trade or countries trade between each other with their own currencies? But on the other hand, our country is very secure, law, business rules, just everything. It's a nice place to be sure of things. But so I think like BRICS, I think that alliance is they're buying a lot of gold to back their play as, into not using the dollar as the trade vehicle. So that's one reason. The other reason is as the United States start to exert pressure on other countries, I think countries are going to feel maybe a little less secure holding the dollar, and they're going to want something else to hold. And Lord knows I don't want to hold Chinese yuan or Russian rubles or any other country's currency. So I think, like, I'm not saying in mass chaos or anything like that, but I think countries in general are going to start doing a push that instead of taking their cash and holding, U.S. bonds, I think, especially as interest rates go down, buying those bonds is going to be less attractive. It'll be great for us though, as the holders of the debt. And I think they're going to say, well, where do we go? If the interest, and I think they're going to go to gold. That's what I think. So that's why I decided to do gold. So let's talk about how much I decided to do. So I decided to take roughly half because I'm going to put half in, go for a couple months, see what happens, and then maybe go more. We'll have to see. So right now I decided to take my 130,000 that I have in those T-bills and basically take 70 of it, which is right here, and stick it into gold. So then the next question was, because I really didn't know much, is, well, how do I buy gold? Because clearly I'm not going to be putting it in my house. So I went to ChatGPT just to ask about gold, and I'm not going to go through all this stuff. You can obviously do this yourself. Are there better gold options in my IRA? But whatever. So what I discovered through this is there's different ways of investing in gold, right? You can invest in gold miners, which I'm not really keen on, and then you can invest in just gold itself. So that was the difference, and then it listed off my expense ratio. So I had decided on this GLDM. I did some Googling on it. There's some big company that holds all of its gold. I can't remember what bank it is, but and it had a real low expense ratio, which I thought was awesome. Low cost, small share. It seemed all great. And it probably is great. And so I went into my my IRA, and I said, hey, let's buy $70,000 with GLDM, and it flashed me a warning, which I thought was really. It said, hey, if you're going to do this, you have to change your profile of your investment strategy. It's just this setting from conservative to aggressive because you're buying GLDM. I think that's a way of warning me, which is really weird. And so I researched GLD, and yeah, GLD is bigger. Maybe you guys know more. I don't know. But I basically trusted my, the holder of my IRA, because they were essentially warning me saying, hey, you want to do this, but you got to change your portfolio for this. I didn't see anything out there that made GLDM such a big risk. But I did switch. So what I did is I switched to GLD, which has a higher expense ratio, but I put my 70,000 into GLD. So like Sunday, I put the trade request in. It executed yesterday because I was selling that market stuff. It couldn't do it right away, and now I have. And when I went to do my buy today on GLD, it did it right away. So I don't know. I mean, it's just I thought I would share it with you guys. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are too. I mean, the good thing is I can get out of that position if I want to. Clearly out of 70,000 out of 1.9 million, it's not the end of the world. What is it? Roughly 100,000 on that would be like 5%. So it's really not a big. It's not a big shift, but I think if the more and more I feel comfortable with this, I'm thinking I'll probably put the rest in there too. Just as I think it's a real hedge. Not necessarily. Whenever I hear the words hedge, I think hedge against inflation. I think it's really a nice hedge against my stocks. That I think it can gain more than a CD. I think it can make more than a money market. Uh, and I really just didn't feel like going into bonds. And so I thought this was a good alternative. And I also think it's going to make some decent money over a long run. So that's it. Just trying to do my best, just sharing my retirement experience with you guys and see what your thoughts are. So have a great day. Keep shooting for retirement, man. It is awesome. Later.